Welcome to Journey Home to Self. This is a place for you to remember who you were before you forgot. Here we find the path to our true self and start living deeply authentic lives that are filled with purpose and meaning. I'm your host, Deepshikha. I'll be your guide, your partner, and a fellow traveler on this adventurous ride. And along with my guests, we bring you conversations, opinions, ideas, wisdom, and resources so you can start your journey home to self. Let's begin. My guest today is Aisling Fitzgibbon. Aisling is a modern medicine woman and holistic nutritionist, passionate about supporting conscious women on the whole health journey to have energy and vitality to create their vision. Aisling is the author of Moving from Fear to Trust, a memoir and roadmap for facing your greatest fears of the unknown and discovering trust in living your highest vision. Aisling, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here and to be diving into this conversation.
So good to have you, and congratulations on the book. How is it going? Has the whole process been for you so far with the launch and everything?
Oh, it's been a massive journey of learning to trust in the process and letting go of control, because I started writing this book in January of 2019. And actually in 2020, I contacted my editor and I told her I didn't think I could finish it. And she texted me back and she said, kindly tell that voice, the ego,
Yeah.
to F off.
Right.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I need to hear that, to realign myself with just keep going and, let go of the need to know the outcome. So I kept going and I finished the book last March of 2022.
Oh, wow.
And that was just before I was about to give birth to my first baby in the April.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so sweet. So it's been a journey from fear to trust for you in so many different ways.
Yeah, exactly. From the very beginning, since I've actually been born, it's been a series of initiations, I call them, or the different life challenges and thresholds that I've walked through.
Yeah.
And there's been this like golden thread the whole time weaving through the whole process. And again, not knowing how it was all, making sense at different junctures. When I look back and when I wrote the book, I was realizing, oh, wow, I've actually been guided all along, even though it didn't necessarily seem like that at different
Yeah.
times. Yeah.
Mm.
So I've been, even in the process of writing it, the book was teaching me how to embody moving from fear to trust.
That is
And
beautiful.
yeah. And like last year, yeah, so I gave birth to my son at home. And then when he was 9 months old, myself and my partner, Richie, decided to head off in our camper van to Europe for 6 months with our two dogs and a baby. And we went all the way around Germany and Belgium, Switzerland, Denmark, Sweden. And we came back home to Ireland in July. And that was when I totally, that was the very ending of the book. And I got everything to the publishers. And then we actually got it ready for September.
Wow. Wow. Beautiful. And I know that you've also had a very interesting journey of how this book came about. Can you share a little bit with us about that as well?
Yeah. So back in the summer of 2017, my mom asked me the question, what is it that you're here to do? And prior to that, I had trained as an occupational therapist, and then I went and I trained as a nutritionist. And that was how, I started setting up my own business in 2016. But I knew that I was here for something more than just helping people with nutrition. And when she asked me that question, the answer came through, which was moving from fear to trust.
Mm.
And I just started writing that. And I was like, I'm here to move from fear to trust. And I'm here to help other people to cross the bridge from fear to trust. So that was the piece. Fast forward a few months later, and my mom passes away very suddenly, very, tragically. She ended up being in a medically induced coma for 3 months. And then she, they removed the life support and she left her earthly body. And that was like entering into the unknown in the biggest way possible. But I think I'd been prepared for my whole life for that time to actually be able to really go into it. And it was a few months later, I was talking at a conference, and after giving my talk, I was talking all about my journey with activism and moving away from fighting against the system to actually creating the new.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady who came in after me, I never knew her name or anything or saw her before. She walked onto the stage and she said, everybody in life has a soul contract, whether you're meeting somebody for 5 minutes or you're with them for 50 years. And my mom's name was Martha. She said Aisling and Martha had a contract to work together. And Martha's death was her physical exit, but have no doubt that Martha's working with Aisling from the other side. And when I heard that, those words just kind of washed over me with such peace, but with such certainty that that was absolutely the truth. And I was just like, that's the reason why I came here to this conference. This is why I need to hear this message. And so the next day I bumped into this lady and I said, you know, before my mom died and before she went into the coma, she said in the hospital, she sat up on the bed and she said, I'm an eternal being. Get in with the Americans. And this lady responded, I'm the American and I'm here to help you. And you're writing your story into a book and I'm going to help you. And this is what's happening. And I was just like, what?
Wow.
Okay. And, you know, I was in the midst of grief. So anyone who understands that process and losing a loved one, I felt like lost in the woods at that time. And yes, I had a vision and I kind of knew the direction I was going in, but losing my mom, I felt like, what am I even doing? And so meeting her just realigned me with the path that we were on. And that was how the book started.
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you and I have that in common. I remember, we chatted about this briefly years ago, but I also lost my mom very quickly and suddenly in 2018. And I just started my business. Very similarly after her death. And like, you said, anyone who's gone through grief of losing a loved one, especially a parent, it's a whole different thing, right? It's like you can't explain it in words, but it's like a tsunami. Some days it really gets you. And I remember being at this, it was like a networking event for women entrepreneurs. And there was a medium there. And she came to me and she said, don't be sad. Your mom can do so much more for you from the other side that she could do here. I still get emotional talking about it. But her passing definitely opened me up to the journey that I've gone through in the last few years. And I totally believe it. I don't have a confirmation of it, but I totally know it in my soul that she and I were connected in different past lives, in different relationships. And there's definitely a spiritual connection there more than, a mother-daughter connection. So I totally get it. I also love that, you talk about not fighting the system, but creating a new system. I love that so much. Not a lot of people talk about it. And I went through the cycle. I had this podcast called How Do Women, Let's Buck the System, Smash the Patriarchy, or something like that. I've forgotten the name now. And we ran 30 seasons. And I was going through a very deep spiritual journey through that season. But one of my biggest learning after that podcast was, and I'm so glad that we did 30 seasons and we had some wonderful conversations. But one of the things that I realized was that in order to, before you smash the patriarchy, you first have to heal the patriarchy, and you can't do that by smashing. Like you cannot fight it with resistance. You have to create a better way, and that's why Journey Home to Self was born in many different ways as well. So I love that because we're still in the in the narrative right now is that we have to fight. We have to fight it. We have to fight the system, get through the system. And I don't disagree with that. In some situations, that is required as well. Like let's go for the marches. Let's go for the, let's have our resistance movements or whatever. But I think side by side, when we create this new paradigm, that's really important too. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, that came through years of activism. I was involved with I had a campaign called the Girl Against Fluoride from like 2011 to like 2014.
Sorry, say that again. Girl Against?
The Girl Against Fluoride.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they added like fluoride chemicals to the water. And
right. Year two. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I learned about the negative impacts on that when I got really ill myself and started to go on a healing journey. And so I suppose I learned that, yes, there is power in kind of coming up against issues, societal issues, or seeing things that you don't want and seeing things that aren't working. But then you have to then move beyond that and go, okay, well, what is it that we actually want to imagine? What is it that we want to create? And pouring our life force into that is really where our power lies. And I think this is the time that we're in. And this is why so many of us are called onto the paths that we are, because we are facilitators of bringing this in. Even having a conversation like that, a conversation like this is bringing it in.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's all these small steps that are actually guiding us. And I think when you said that about your mom, likewise, my mom had the exact same experience. And I actually write that in the first chapter of the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's called I Know You From Before.
Oh, beautiful.
And it was when my mom gave birth to me. She said she didn't even know if I was a boy or a girl, but she said when she locked eyes with me, she said she just was like overcome with this love and profound recognition of like, I know you from before. Like, you're not just my baby girl. You're like, we have journeyed together for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And we continue to journey. And that was why I think similarly with your mom, the passing of them is such a profound physical loss.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's an opening, and they actually have helped to catalyze us into our positions
100%.
for this time. And I think, yeah, the new paradigm, like, what does that mean? It sounds sometimes a bit like lofty and, you know, a bit up in the
Yes.
air.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been asked this question a number of times, and I said it's really about we're coming out of an age of separation from source, separation from our true nature, separation from actual nature, and into this, like, the beautiful interconnectedness of us all with
Mm-hmm.
the diversity of all of our expressions. And we're all we're all the divine in
Yeah.
diverse expression, but we've been in this world of opposites for so long that that's running through our bodies, that's running through our psyche, that's running through our nervous system. So it is a journey, I feel, of coming home to ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and that divine self inside to start expressing into our physical life. And that changes your whole consciousness. It changes the direction that you're going in, because you're handing it over from your small self, your ego,
Mm-hmm.
into what actually wants to emerge through you. And for me, like the book Moving from Fear to Trust, when I actually received the foreword to the book from my editor, I just started bawling, crying, with just like, oh my gosh, you know, I did not have a clue how any of this was going to come through, but somehow it all came through, and, you know, all fell into place. And it wasn't about me writing a book. It was actually about me opening to receiving this message and just letting go of my resistance, you know, letting go of my ego's fear of the unknown, really. And I
Yes.
think that in itself is the message. And that's the message. It's like a something that has to go into the collective field, because for the new to come in, the ego has to be in a journey and a process of surrendering, because the change can't come through the mind
Mm-hmm.
and us trying to figure it out, because it has to come from the greater self emerging through us.
Yeah, the higher self, that the change comes from there. The change never comes from ego. I love this saying by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he says that as long as you use the ego to change, you're only going to endorse the ego more. You're not going to create any profound, any real change. I love that. Last night, I was hosting a sacred circle for women. I do that in my town here. And one of the themes that came through was fear. And there is a lot of fear in the world happening right now, with the wars happening in different parts of the world. And I love that you talk about fear, and you talk about fear of the unknown, because that's what it is. The fear comes because we can no longer control anything. We actually can never control, but the fear comes when we become aware that we cannot control anything. So can you talk to us a little bit about the starting point of the book? Like, you know, what is the fear, what is the trust, and how do we move? Maybe some ideas, some resources that we can use.
I think for me, the moving from fear to trust was, I was on a very, like, mapped out plan of my life. So I had, you know, went to school. I had an alternative upbringing in a sense that my mom always used to kind of give me opportunities to not go to school. So we used to go on like adventure days, and we'd go to like Buddhist meetings and nature walks and yoga classes and all these different things. So I had such an influence from her, you know, from the early days. And then growing up, I suppose she kind of let me choose my own path. So I was going down a very, you know, mapped out plan. I was training as an occupational therapist, and I thought I'd be working in a hospital and all that. And then my health just broke down. So it started when I was 19. I just kind of hit a wall of total exhaustion and depression and anxiety, and I went to a doctor. I was put on medication for 4.5 years.
Wow.
So during my time in university, then I was kind of questioning things, and, you know, I was working in different areas like in mental health, and I was going, you know, surely there's a connection between what you're eating and how you're feeling. And, you know, I was just starting to see things and starting to ask questions to myself.
Right.
And then at the very end, I was offered a job, and I had like a first class honors degree. And I was like, every part of me was like, you cannot take another step in this path. Even though it was literally all there for me. I spent 6 years in university, like, here is your career, you know, all there. And my health was just like, my health was not in a good place. And I had this overriding message in myself was, you have to get your health in check. Like, you have to actually take your health back into your own hands. And that was the first, you know, and I talk about this, the whole journey in the book, but that was the first initiation and the first opening into moving from fear to trust, because I hadn't realized, but when I came off medication, I entered into this void space, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm after letting go of what I knew. So I knew that, you know, my career path was going to be this, and now I'm being called onto this other thing, and it didn't make any sense at the time, but I knew that I had to do this. So there was a stage where I was fighting against that. You know, I was trying to like hurry getting better, and I was trying to like get myself better so I could get back onto that path. And each time I tried to do that, it would just fall apart, and I would fall apart.
Yeah.
And it was my mom at the time. She said, "You're just here for a different path." And I know that for you. And I was just like, "But what is it?" She's like, "You'll find it." So she was holding the torch for me the whole time through that period. And so the moving from fear to trust was really to get into a space of being able to deeply accept where I was, and to let go of the attachment to the outcome. So what that was like, letting go of attachment to like feeling 100% better physically. I was just like, I am where I am, and I can't fight it. I just have to. And once I actually got to that stage, it was like my life force could come back in, because I was no longer in this constant fight, internal struggle, which was constantly draining my energy and, you know, activated. You know, I was just coursing with adrenaline the whole time, even though I was eating all the right things and, you know, juicing and doing all the different things. I was like, I was not in a state of harmony until I could actually just go, okay, just here I'm deeply accepting myself as I am, and I'm letting go of the attachment to the outcome. And that message is woven through my story, like over and over again. Like, you know, the different chapters that I've moved through has been that. And I'm brought to that, you know, it's a continuous process of moving from fear to trust, because I'm always being brought into like new territory.
Right.
And so those fears come up, because it's like, oh my gosh, how is this all going to work out? And again, I have to remind myself. And actually, my partner Richie even said to me recently, because I was, you know, I'm going through a whole new territory right now, because my partner's away touring in Europe, and I have my baby son, and I'm starting back my business and everything. And he said to me, you need to read back your book, you know, to remind yourself of the tools and the different practices. And so it's not just like, here's your tool, away you go. It's really multi-dimensional. It's
Totally.
like it's mind is working on your psyche, it's working on your body, supporting my body with nutrition. And again, coming back into trust is to really open up my body so that I'm in a nice still place where I can actually hear myself.
Yeah.
And I'm not being drowned out by the voices and the opinions of other people outside of me who can't see my unique life path, my unique vision, because it's completely different to others. So I feel for those who are listening, moving from fear to trust is really an invitation for you to give absolute authority and recognition to your own self, knowing your own answers, that it's all encoded within yourself. And I had this conversation with my friend earlier. We were talking about how it's that you're turning inside because you have the divinity is inside yourself, and that's why this podcast is so important at this time.
Right.
Coming home to self is tuning back into the divine self inside, so that you can source your answers for you. To go, okay, what is it that I need to do? How do I call in the support that I need right now? All the different answers are there, but we've been so conditioned by the world that we've been living in for so long that we are conditioned to look outside and receive that from maybe parents or partners or colleagues or friends and peers. But ultimately, nobody can know your truth, only you.
You can.
So that's we have to be directed back into ourselves. And so that was the journey that I've gone through over the past, really intensely over the past 13 years. And that's why I feel, looking back now, everything was preparing me to be a messenger for this time.
Yeah.
For this message to come through in this particular way. And when you actually write it all out, and I'm sure if you're writing your own life story, you can start to see these beautiful golden threads weaving through the whole picture.
And yes.
And that's the hand of the divine working through it, even though you might not have the language or the awareness to articulate it at the time, but you can actually see that happening.
Yeah.
And if you can trust in what's calling you, because what's calling you is beyond what's already known.
Right. It is in the unknown. The answers are in the unknown.
It's in the unknown. And it's like, when you can go through that once, and then you can build that resilience, and that it's like having, I call it like your trust bank account, that you can make, deposits into it. So then when you go into another, I call them like a fear portal, you're going through another fear, then you can go, hang on a minute, I did this before in this other scenario. So how did I do it the last time?
Right.
And I did that. But the thing is, fear is so paralyzing. It knocks into our, it locks into our nervous system, puts us into, people are either fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We have all these different ways that our nervous system responds, and it puts us into survival mode.
Totally.
And so we have to remind ourselves and actually attune ourselves again to the higher vision of why are you doing what you're doing, and why are you showing up, and then be able to support yourself to regulate your nervous system. So for me, my background is in nutrition, and really educating people to realize that the nervous system is electrical.
Yeah. And I love that you talk about the electrical nervous system. And I definitely want to come back to this, because that's the real juice. That's something that people can use. I do want to pull out a few golden threads from what you just shared, because I don't want them to get lost for the listeners. First of all, everybody that I've spoken to on this podcast, off the podcast, who've had the journey home to self, who have crossed that river of change from the unknown, from the fear to trust, it's exactly the same journey. I mean, I could see my journey in your journey. My health started to fail, and I was doing something in my business and was not working, until the divine had to just literally make me see that that's not your path. It's not going to work. You have to look the other way, and it's going to work. And I love that you use some of the words that you use, like the tomb. I use the words too, because when you enter that space of the fear of the unknown, it's either by curiosity, you start asking questions that is there more to life, is that it, or profound questions like, who am I, am I my job, am I my title, or sometimes the portal to the unknown opens up through crisis, like you have a health crisis, you have a financial breakdown, relationship breakdown, and you are in that unknown now, you are in that tomb now. And I love what you said about acceptance and then surrendering the outcome, because I get a lot of people who ask me questions. I know that I am in fear right now, and I know that I'm not trusting, but I don't know how to stop. Like, I don't know how to stop worrying about this issue that I have in my life, whether it's financial or health. And what I say to them is that the first step is acceptance. Accept that this is what it is, like the isness of the issue. Because when we create that resistance, when you fight it just exasperates in our mind as well. So I love that you talked about accepting and surrendering the outcome. And it's practice. It doesn't happen in one go, as you know. It takes a lifetime, sometimes a lot of journeys, a lot of mini journeys on that unknown to the birthing of your new self. And every time, like it's like an escrow, like you said, you put in your bank account and you can take back from that escrow. But the fear that people feel, Aisling, is very real, right? It is literally a survival response from the nervous system. So I would love to talk a little bit more about that, because it actually feels like you are in the tomb. Like, I remember when I was in the unknown, my first time in the leg of my journey home to self, I actually felt like it was a tomb, and I was in a dark space, and I was being crushed, and there were monsters lurking from everywhere, and everywhere I would go, like, I didn't know anything. It was so scary. And of course I didn't know it at that time, but now when I look back, I literally, my body, my nervous system saw it as an actual threat. It was as if I was actually covered in or buried inside the tomb. So tell us a little bit more about that from your experience and your expertise.
Yeah, so what you're describing, it's such a you really bring the analogy like alive in how you say that, because that's exactly what it feels like. And I think especially for the first time, it's absolutely terrifying. And it just, yeah. So it really activates all the nervous system. So the nervous system is electrical. So you can't stop the body from responding in fear, but what you can do is support your body through that process so that it can actually start to relax. So when it's gone into fight or flight, we'll just simplify it down into that. So what you want to be doing is you want to be feeding the nervous system. So it's using a lot of resources, a lot of energy when it's in that state. And then that actually compounds and actually feeds that feeling of like, you're just feeling like the outside, everything is threatening because you're in that state, you're in that like hyper arousal. And
Right.
Everything feels like a threat to your survival, almost like you could be killed at any moment.
It's like a tiger chasing you, or like a dinosaur, a T-Rex chasing you.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Everything is hyper focused and hyper mobilized. You have all the energy, all the blood flowing in your extremities, right?
Yeah, everything. So you want to be looking at how you're feeding your nervous system. So you really so this applies to whatever diet that you subscribe to, whether you're plant-based or meat eating. So it's not like you have to be following a specific diet. But what you want to be doing is having more mineral salts for the nervous system. So you get mineral salts in things like leafy greens and celery juice, cucumbers, lemons, all that kind of stuff. So it sounds really, really simple, but especially when your body is feeling like that, you want to be increasing those types of foods into your diet. And that's going to be relaxing and feeding the nervous system and the adrenals. And once you're feeding them in the right way, instead of, sometimes people will be going for like, if your body is needing that, you're going to be craving salt. So you might be looking for like chips or crisps or snacky things that are with lots of salt, but it's actually your body is needing the mineral salts, which are in the foods that are going to be the most supportive and helpful will be those types of foods, as opposed to the processed types of foods. So your body's looking for that to nourish and to relax the nervous system. And then also you want to be using foods like that are high in glucose, because you're using up a lot of physical energy as well. And you want to be looking at grazing. So you want to be not going for big hours or intermittent fasting or anything like that, because that's going to be putting huge strain on the nervous system. So glucose would be found in things like honey. Raw honey is good, coconut water, fruits, and squashes, pumpkins, potatoes, things like that. So they can be added into your diet, and just making sure that you're eating frequently is so important as well, because again, you're putting a huge strain on your body. When you can have those that nourishment coming into the nervous system, it really just starts to relax your body. And then there's like specific supplements that are really helpful. Things like lemon balm. Again, that's really calming to the nervous system. You can take that in a tea or a tincture. And then another one is really good. It's very good for women's health as well, is ashwagandha.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I
So
take
good.
that. Yes.
So good. Yeah. Because I find if I'm in that state, I don't know, the adrenals will often show up with hair loss in women.
Mm-hmm.
So I know when I've gone through periods of stress, like you'll see that your hair is shedding a lot. So ashwagandha is a really nourishing, supportive herb for the adrenals and the nervous system as well. And you want to be focusing on hydrating your body as well, because fear is very dehydrating, uses up all your fluids. So you want to be focusing on hydrating. Not that you have to drink loads and loads of water, but just adding in like things like lemon water, coconut water, and foods that are, it's good to have some, even if you're having cooked food, it's good to have some like raw fruits and vegetables, because you have all the real live water in that. And again, that's helping to feed all your cells. And so when you're able to hydrate, that's kind of bringing that message of safety and calm to your body and signaling you're safe, it's okay, even if it is unknown and you don't know exactly where everything is going, or, if you're in that space of the unknown and you can't see exactly, you're bringing safety into the unknown. And I feel we're coming out of a time where the unknown is like this scary thing and it's outside of us, and it's like, oh, as you said, it's like full of all these kind of scary creatures and things are kind of
Creepy crawlies, the monsters.
Yeah. But it's actually that has been valid, and that has been very much part of the reality in separation based consciousness that we've been in for a long, long time. So that fear is very, very real, and it's very valid as well. So it's like to acknowledge that. But now we're coming out of that age and we're coming into that. The unknown is actually an extension of you. It's actually an invitation to find more of who you are in the environment, and it's actually an adventure. And so when you can relax into the adventure of being in the unknown, that's you're able to actually relax into it and realize it's just me discovering more of who I am in my environment, as opposed to it being an opposite and it's going to be trying to take me down. It's actually to just open to more of yourself and to allow yourself to be in it. And when you can just feel your whole body relaxing into it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. The nutrition part is actually a light bulb moment for me, because I definitely now remember that whenever I've been in times of stress, definitely, in the early stages, I would just hoard on chips. Chips are my like guilty pleasure. But I would do that so much. And it so makes sense, because like when we think about, let's say in the wild, let's say if a deer is grazing and is suddenly being chased by a cheetah, it's not going to stop to graze again, right? So to create safety for our body, because our body learns from cues from what we give it, right? If we can give it the nutrition that it needs, and not just in terms of food, this is great, but also in terms of like stillness and meditation and mindfulness and, breath work and all of that, it gives cues to our body that it is safe, and our body has the capacity to go back into the parasympathetic nervous system as well, to relax on its own. It is when those stress hormones are being continued for so long, that's when it starts to cause that imbalance. So, oh my God, that was so great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I also want to share that like you said, the fear that we feel, like, all the monsters and all of that. Yeah, some of it is external too, but most of it is definitely valid, but most of it is also coming from our internal voices. That is the ego, that is the inner critic talking to us. And for me specifically, when I was able to change that focus, I suddenly saw that the tomb was no longer the tomb, but it was actually a womb. It suddenly turned from this hostile place to this nurturing place. Because in the womb, you're still in the unknown. It's still dark, but you are held, and you know that you're being cocooned and you're being nourished. And again, it makes so much sense that you will nourish yourself with those foods because you're growing as a different self. And that really happens with accepting the isness of the issue, the surrendering the outcome, calming your nervous system down with all those tools. And that's when you go from that unknown is a scary place, but now it's an adventure. Now I can't wait to see who I become when I come out of this womb.
I absolutely love that. And it totally is the womb. And yeah, it's like you're entering into the cosmic womb. And
Yes.
it is holding you. And so, because I think I've heard people say to me actually recently, oh, you're talking about all the unknown, as if to say like you're just going into the abyss. But actually, the unknown is like the womb is so essential for us to go into. And we're not just going to go into it once, we're going to go into it multiple times, because there's so many different iterations and evolutions that we're going to be going through over our lifetime. And so the more that we can actually go, oh yeah, here I go, and actually prepare ourselves for like, yeah, this is going to be the unknown. How can I make this womb space as supportive and as nourishing as possible? How can I bring in the support? And how can I mother myself and give myself that deep love and compassion as I go through the growing pains of, a new experience and making that transition. And like you are, when a baby is born, a newborn, you don't just shock them from like the cold and into like, bright lights and all that. It's like, because I had a home birth, so the lights were low. We're like in our sitting room, and just that feeling of like he was born, he came straight onto my breast, he was like getting the colostrum straight away, this lovely warm liquid, and then he was cocooned and held and and warm blankets. And we have to do the same for ourselves as we go through these phases, and we have to give ourselves deep love and nurturing and that awareness of like, yeah, this is fear, and call it out, and be able to realize that for our greater self and our higher self and that capacity to come in, we have to go through these experiences and these initiations. And for other people, they might look at your life and say, oh gosh, it seems like difficult, or going through all these different challenges. But it's like, these are the necessary portals, these are the necessary experiences to go through.
Totally. And of course, when you're going through it, it's very challenging. But when you have hindsight vision, which is 2020, you see how perfectly it was orchestrated by the divine so that you could come into the most authentic version of yourself. And I also want to bring in something that you talked about in the first segment, where you talked about the divine is in us, right? We have all the answers, and there comes a time when you really have to accept that, and you have to then turn the I, which is the EYE, inside rather than outside. And that kind of dissolves the I, as in the ego, like the letter I. How did you do it? Did you have any situations where people were like, what are you doing? What is this book that you're writing? Why are you not working on your business anymore? And what was that process like for you to silence the voice from the outside and then completely go within and only listen to the intuition of your higher self and the hand of the divine that was guiding you?
I love that question so much. Yeah, because after giving birth to his name is Rian, our son, last year, my dad came over. He lives in England, so he came over for like the first 5 weeks after his birth, and he asked me that question, like, where is this book even going to go, and how are you going to make this work? And so that was the real like critic voice, and I had to kind of sit with that and go, okay, yeah, you know, that's what it seems like.
Yeah. Because
you can't see it, because it's the unknown. It's not visible to the eye yet. So after that, well, we went on a voyage. So we went, as I said, we went on the tour. We called it the Honesty Tour around Europe. And that was me really sitting for 6 months in moving from fear to trust and letting go of this idea that I had to get back to my business and I had to do all these things, because I was like, I have to have this clear space for this to come in and to land in. And so I suppose in a way it was easier because we were away from like friends and family. So we were in our own little cocoon inside the camper van. So I had a lot of time to just really, be with my baby son and just like face into, this is what I've come here for.
Yeah.
And I have to learn how to trust it. I have to learn how to let go into it. And I had no idea of how to launch it. So I was, that just emerged. It emerged very organically. So we had different events when we came back to Ireland in different counties. So we called them house concerts.
Mm-hmm.
And just the women and the men that came to it, it was just like, it was all orchestrated. And I felt like that all emerged because I completely shut out that voice of the outer critic, which was actually bringing through what I was thinking inside anyway.
Right, exactly.
Which,
It's like a mirror image of what your critic is. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was showing it to me what I was thinking inside. Like, you're just after giving birth to a baby, you've got all this responsibility. Like, what are you doing with this book? And I had to go, I know that's what it seems like right now, but we've got to trust in the long-term vision of what we're bringing in.
Yeah.
And just going into that space of letting go into it and handing myself over as a conduit, so that it's not that I have to personally make it happen. It's like I'm just letting it emerge through me. And so then we came back to Ireland after being in the camper van, and we did the house concert tour around Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And that has just emerged so naturally. And and again, it showed me this like beautiful golden thread that's working through us all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we're all getting the messages in different ways, but we're coming together and we're collaborating to create this new paradigm, because we've all gone on our personal voyages, and now we can realize, okay, yeah, we are here to bring this through together.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And that's when you start withdrawing from that escrow of trust as well. And I also had something similar where, of course, I had lots of voices, and I think I've known this from a long time, that this whole idea of guiding women on the journey home to self is really what I wanted to do. But I've had a lot of people tell me it's not going to work, or blah, 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 blah. And those have been my inner voice being mirrored back to me. So the last few months, I would say last 6 to 8 months, I've been sitting inside, like, what am I doing? Trying out different things, nothing really working out, or not having the motivation or passion to even, follow through on some of the things that I wanted to do. But I had to sit with, almost in darkness, and when I say darkness, I actually mean like, closing out the lights and putting a blindfold on your eyes and really meditating and like going within. And sometimes you have to sit with both choices. Like, what would it look like if you went all in and stopped listening to the voices? What would it look like if you actually listened to these voices of authority and parents and teachers and mentors and whoever it is in your life? And what would that look like? And ultimately, the answer would be given to you. And I would say mostly people choose the one that has been their inner calling. And for me also, it has been like, no, I don't care what people are talking about. I want to do this because this is what gives me purpose and meaning. And that is when you start escrowing, or you start withdrawing from that escrow of trust, because it's not that the voices die down completely. Of course, it helps when you, like for me, it was about literally not going on Instagram and Facebook and, deleting social media, and also not being in touch with some of the people that I knew would give me the other advice, that physical action was required. But then you always start to go back to that trust, and you start looking at those golden threads in your life, that red thread in your life, in fact, that this has been the signs all along that this is what you're supposed to do. And yes, it requires courage. And I would say if someone who's listening, who is in that space of that fear, that unknown, then you're worth the courage, you're worth the effort. Don't count yourself out. And if you are listening to all those voices, go back and balance both the options in your hand, and then make a decision. rather than just listening to those voices without doing a check-in. Like, I always say I make my decisions when I've checked with my higher authority, which is myself. Like, I don't want to, I want to listen to people, especially when it's like a big decision, like, selling a house, buying a house, or whatever. But I always want to go back and check in and have a meeting with my higher self, have a meeting with my counsel, and say, what are they saying? And then weigh both the decisions. Is that what your journey looked like as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Literally. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, because again, you can't, yeah, you listen to the outside, but then you can't let that dictate your choices, but you receive it as, I suppose, a way to, it's a form of guidance as well, because sometimes it's kind of showing you just a limitation.
Mm.
But it's also an opportunity to strengthen. So if somebody is not necessarily agreeing with that, and yeah, I think I've done the similar where I've had to, withdraw contact from certain people for a period of time when I'm doing something that is like totally the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, because you need to protect your field
Yeah,
from
totally.
from interference. But also I find now that I'm more able to be in the presence of those who don't necessarily agree with the choices that I'm making, or the life path they can't necessarily, doesn't make sense to them. It doesn't, what are you at? That I'm like, oh, they can strengthen me
Yeah.
to realize I actually know who I am. I don't need you to see me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And but by you not seeing me and maybe saying certain things, you're actually strengthening me.
Mm.
Whereas in the past, I would have felt like, I suppose I wasn't as sure of myself as I am now. That would have just like floored me, and I would just be like,
Right.
oh, I can't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah,
Whereas
because
now,
that was a mirror. They were showing you the mirror. And now the mirror doesn't match. That's
no,
not who you are. Your inside
no,
is not matching with what they're showing on the outside.
yeah, yeah,
So it
yeah,
it it actually strengthens you because you know who you are and you know what your life purpose is. So it doesn't match.
yeah,
And that's fascinating to me. It's so beautiful because I too can be in situations where I couldn't be in before
yeah,
and not be affected by it. And
yeah,
I was journaling one day and I was like, wow, this is how I know the work is working.
yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're able to stand in your presence and in your yeah, your full inner knowing that, yes, I know exactly who I am and my position, and what I am dedicating my whole life to.
Yeah.
And nobody can take that away from you once you have that once you have that rooted in. Nobody can take that from you, and the only thing that can really disrupt that is fear. And
Hmm.
so by bringing this to your awareness and having this conversation and hearing us in our experiences is so important right now, because we can hold ourselves back and we can get trapped and we can fall into loops when we succumb to the fear. So it's like,
Mm.
okay, this is what's happening, we accept it, but we can support ourselves through this so that we can move through it. So it's like the only way is through. In the birth of Rian, I got to a stage, they call it the transition. The baby's almost about to,
Right.
descend. And I heard other women describing this, but when I was in it, I just felt like I just was like, I cannot do this. And I was banging my hands down, and I was like, I was resisting it. I was like, I can't do this, because I was dying. Like, my
Right.
old self was dying, the maiden was dying. And I was saying, I can't do this, because I couldn't do it as the maiden. I had to die to actually become the mother. And Richie, my partner, was holding my hands, because I'd lift up my hands and he'd hold my hands. And he just said, you are doing this. You are doing this. And then that kind of just allowed me to just relax into it. And then I could just feel the head just dropping into my pelvis and the head emerging. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, he's here. And I was just, yeah, just the amazement of him being born. But it was that moment of just, I moved through so much fear and so much resistance, and I came through it. And
Hmm.
I wanted to run up the hill. I wanted to run away from the experience,
Right. Right.
and I feel like similarly right now, because I'm in an intense kind of portal at the moment. And I'm like, the only way is through.
True. Totally.
And just stay with us, because you are going to emerge, and this is all being orchestrated for this to happen.
Yeah.
Um, So the more that you can, really hold the space for your own experience to actually fully come through.
Yeah, yeah. And the last
Oh.
battle is always the hardest. It is the
Always.
hardest.
Yeah,
Always the
the
hardest.
hardest.
But that is also, it shows that you're so much closer. So if you can, and the only way is through, you can't go back. You
You
cannot
can't
go
go
back.
back.
You will not go back. Like literally in the birthing room and metaphorically in the birthing room of your life, you
Yeah.
will not go back. You don't want to go back to the old way. And
Yeah.
so you either can stay stuck for how long, and then
Yeah.
there comes like this moment where you have to push through. Something
Yeah.
similar happened to me too when I was delivering my second one, and he was a vaginal birth after C-section. So this was my second baby, but my first vaginal birth. And I had been in labor for so long that I was in a similar stage. And I was like, I don't fucking care. Like, do whatever to this. Like, you want to take out the baby, don't take out the baby. I am just going to sleep. And my OBGYN, she looked at me and she said to me, you have not worked so hard to get yourself cut again. I am not cutting you and you're pushing. And so I was like, yes, I'm pushing. And that final moment where I pushed, I was resisting, touching the head as it comes out through the birth canal. But when I touched it, it was almost like a mystical moment where my hand like mystically moved to the canal, and I touched his forehead coming out. And it was the most, like, I have never felt force like this in my entire life. And it is
Yes.
very similar to when the hardest battle is the strongest. That's when you need yourself the most. And when you can give yourself a hug and nourish yourself a little bit, that's what gives you the courage to say, I am going all in and I'm going through it. And I am on the other side of this
Yeah.
too.
Oh, it's so exciting when you do that. And it's so good to have this conversation. And I'm really excited for everyone to hear it because,
Yeah.
once you can have this as a framework and just to kind of seed your consciousness with this, when you hit those places, when you're in those thresholds, you can go, oh yeah, I remember, this is
Yes.
natural. It's natural to feel like this, and it's natural to, move through that resistance and get to the place of being able to surrender, because as you say, that force of the birth coming through. Similarly, what's coming through us all right now, and I think that's why it's quite an intense time on earth. There's that feeling of like it's coming through, and so you're either kicking and screaming and fighting the process,
Yeah.
or you're just kind of going, this is all for me to actually relax into and open into and soften into.
Yeah.
And it can be graceful. It doesn't have to be, it can be a graceful opening. And I have to remind myself of that as well, because
Right.
when you're in the, when you're in the thick of it, you need these reminders to bring your, to reorientate yourself and realign yourself. And yeah, when you actually do, and when you go through that portal, it's just the most phenomenal experience. And then then you're like, oh my gosh, what more am I capable of? Because if you go through that and you come through the other side, you realize, oh my gosh, there's so much more to me than I realized.
Yeah. You'd never want to go to your normal life again because you feel the unknown now. So you won't do that. So Aisling, to end, we know that the journey home to self and the journey from fear to trust is a constant process. It's not one and done. So what part of the journey are you on now, if you would be so willing to share with us?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm entering into the unknown now of the phase of, I suppose, I have the book, it's out in the world. I'm bringing the book into as many hands as possible. And I'm in this whole new unknown with my business. So before I had Rian, I had Aisling Health School. So I was doing lots of focus on nutrition and supporting people with nutrition. But since the birth of Rian, I've been gestating a whole new expression with that. So it's completely changing. And I suppose with that, I'm having to lean into the unknown completely to be able to bring that through. And that's been tricky because I've had to really trust in my own power to be able to create.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because I've had that identity now of being a mother, and then realizing I am a mother, but I also have this mission.
Yeah.
And then kind of being able to merge the two. So that's been my edge right now, and just kind of moving into that, and being able to call in the right support has been so essential.
Yeah.
Getting like the childcare in place, and, you know, getting a routine so that I can have the space to create what it is. So I have this massive vision that I think will probably take about 5 years anyway to really bring together. But yeah, just landing in. So the first kind of expression of that is I'm creating the Moving from Fear to Trust portal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be the first invitation for people to come in, to be able to really just as a guiding place for those who were on that experience and required that support and assistance with different tools and space holding from a well-seasoned traveler of the unknown.
Yeah.
So even though it is like nutrition, but it's really for me, I'm facilitating this changeover and this journey from the old paradigm to the new paradigm. And so that's my medicine. And so I've been prepared and initiated to be able to hold that space. And so just like letting go into that has been a process really over the past year. And now I feel, yes, it's kind of landing in, it's coming into the space. And for me, just creating stillness and quietness for that to come in has been so essential, because like everyone has all ideas about what I should be doing, and, you know, all this.
Totally. You're in your book now. You're in the framework.
I'm literally, the book is actually living me. I'm like, what? It's living me. And Richie has kind of stepped aside in terms of, he's not physically here. He's in Germany right now.
Right.
And my friends who are like mystics and seers, so they're like, this is all part of your initiation, Aisling.
Yeah.
You know, he had to step out physically for you to actually be able to hold and bring forth your greatest capacity as the divine woman that I am. And so it feels like accumulation of all the different stages that I've worked through and journeyed through, to go, oh wow, I'm actually going to bring all this through. And then and only then is like my broadcast is like so aligned with Moving from Fear to Trust, because I'm living it inside and out and in every way possible.
Amazing. I love that. And good luck to you on that. And I know that you will figure it out, and whatever you create is going to be just beautiful. Thank you so much, Aisling, for your thank you so much, Aisling, for your wisdom and your time.
Oh, it's been a total pleasure. Thank you so much. And I cannot wait to listen back to this episode. And I invite everyone to check out Moving Fear to Trust if that calls to you. It's available now.
Where can we get the book? Yeah, please share with us. Where can we get that?
Yeah, so right now it's on my website. So it's on aislingfitzgibbon.com. So if you order a copy, and I have a free Moving Fear to Trust workshop that comes with that to kind of give you a little bit of extra space to go deeper into the concepts of the book.
Amazing. So we'll put that in the show notes, the link in the show notes, and everybody just check it out. I know that the tools that Aisling shares inside her workshop and in the book are going to be phenomenal and so useful on this journey. So thank you again, Aisling.
Oh, thanks a million, and best of luck on the new episodes and the new season.
Thank you. And our dear listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this conversation, I'd be so grateful if you can give us a 5-star review. And if you'd like to go deeper into the content we share here, check out our publication/community on Substack, also by the name of Journey Home to Self, where we dig a little bit deeper on how to discover the true self within us, supported by a sisterhood that celebrates our uniqueness. I share newsletter type articles every week, and I'd love for you to check it out. You can find the link from the show notes. We'll also put Aisling's book over there. Thank you again. We appreciate you so much. We'll be back next week with another great episode. Until then, remember, you matter. Your spirit matters. Your voice matters. Your contribution and your energy in the world matters. And though our paths may be different and can feel lonely at times, we are more deeply connected than we can ever imagine. Thank you.